Um, it is January 17th, 2022. Um, I realized after I took a short break, again, I know I'm a receiver of information, and then I digest information, and then I record my, for lack of a better term, or digestion of the input that I was receiving in any particular moment, um, based on the whereabouts. So I was speaking to Lewis. Actually, I was watching. I took a break from he and the video. He and I were both, and we have larger gaps in cognition. He having a different viewfinder or a different life frame than myself. So there's several different factors, layers of differential, which for me, if I sit and I ponder it, it's just how the interaction is in a diagnostic kind of a way, for the human condition. Since I'm in this mass casualty and informality at the moment, I'm not being looked after. Let's put it this way. I know there's a greater good. I know there's a greater extension. I know that there is something that looks after me, that I don't have a front face war. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. The problem lies within that shell, however, because there's the greater outside wants to war all the time. There's the inner peacekeeper and gatekeeper of sorts between what is of a militant important or military importance, in some human condition. So I'm watching something called Wolf King with Lewis. Trump was in it. I used him as an example, so I hope that he knows it was in the most respectful manner, since he is at a higher level of human condition than I've ever been at. And he's actually made it to National Prayer Breakfast, where I have not. But there's something called a three-ring circus. Barnum and Bailey's, I was told, is the one who used to have the tent, and the children would go and they would see the circus. It's a very different circus than Cirque du Soleil, which is I didn't even know that, I was up by the guy with the light, and my eyesight is not that good. Thank God. But then there was Cirque du Soleil, and then there's Circa, which is, I believe, somewhere in respectable territory, in some magistrate form of, I don't know how any of that's run. I haven't gotten to that level of polite. I say just geopolite, almost just because I am only whatever I've experienced at a plane of one. But experiencing Lewis's human condition tonight while we were watching it, he being of one set of circumstances that receives information differently than I receive information as a conduit of sorts, but then to digest it the way that he digests it in what I call cognition. It's the receivership of the auditory, then it's the processing of the thought, and then it's the patterning of whatever, and then it's what's said and how one interprets things. There's something wrong. Okay, don't want to make anybody wrong, but there is some break in message. When we watched the 5th episode, I couldn't even watch the whole thing. There's a point at which the newscaster says something about petty. And then they called Trump petty. But when a petty officer calls you petty, it's a different everything. It's a different three-ring circus than, let's say, when a newscaster is told, perhaps by someone more in the know or of a different intelligence level of whatever. That's where I get nervous. So I tried to say just as much. I said, listen, I said, if just for this one father-daughter moment, like, after we have this conversation, like, I did an Inspector Gadget from, like, when I was a kid, Penny with Brain on the watch, right? Yeah, kind of like that. I'm like, this message is going to self-destruct in 30 seconds after we are complete having it. I was like, because I don't really want it to leave this room, and I'm not really sure what just happened. Being that whatever. So, he and I received the same info. I wanted to stop for a second and make a point, because I'm not really appreciative of how Trump is spoken of. I have a high respect for Trump as well as for Biden, both being U.S. presidents and of the highest level of our intelligence in New York at the moment, when we're able to receive their message, but we don't even get their day-to-day whatever. It gets confusing. So, and I'm told that the U.S. president is of the highest efficacy or echelon. So again, the input that the humans in this human condition, and I feel like, well, I know I look like a casualty, and I look like I'm very informal, but I said I really appreciate Trump for where he's at and his ability to be real and honest and genuine in spokesperson of a wheel. Like, there's a spoke between the public, I guess, and then the republic, and then some spokesperson that conduits information between, perhaps, if one way of thinking of it, and this message self-destructs after whatever, because I don't really know how to carry this forward on. I'm not defending everybody. Lewis and I had this conversation, and I said, listen, you're like a life coach at the end of your whatever, but we'd never really seen eye to eye, and what if, I was like, just sit with me for a sec. I was like, and you're not my life coach forever, by the way. I was like, I'm just giving you that acknowledgement in the moment, but I don't want you to speak. Because he was the man in the room. So I'm more the closest thing to a man that I had in the room. So I was like, all right, so one guy is tossing that as like a commentator over Trump. Trump said something. Some other guy tosses something over like that. He's like petty. Like, he's so petty. Like, making it like he's so wrong. But then that gets confusing in the four faces of America at the moment. of which messenger is trying to, one's trying to credit, one's trying to, I mean, it is like psychological warfare and torture on the receiving end, a couch potato with no other contact to real human or Jesuit. I mean, and then Lewis and Lynn put on something about the Diary of Anne Frank last night. And then there was some FBI investigator. Oh, he scared the heck out of me. I was like, is that what one really looks like? He had a jacket on with his label of what his day function is. And I'm like, I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of this guy. And then, but he was at least labeled in, he's taking responsibility and credit for the function for which he's allowed to operate within, which I can't get that with the, I mean, most of the human condition, they don't label themselves properly. I mean, it's like a beseeched at my behest. It's, I mean, it's a guessing game every day. So, anyway, so in this three-ring circus, Lou and I just performed privately, just the two of us, where we sat on the couch, we tried to receive the same information. I had to take a pause halfway through. It was a lot to digest, to have a conversation, to ask Lou if he is even possible of taking an elevator from the ground floor to a penthouse in thought process of short to tall stacks, and metaphorically, of course. And so I tried to explain the situation in an alternate viewpoint, and all of a sudden, I mean, like, holy crow, it was like the backlash was so much anger, like, directed at me. Like, we couldn't even, he's like, no, Nicole. And I'm like, whoa, okay, that's not the reaction I was expecting. I thought you'd be a lot more reachable, but clearly I was wrong. So I was like, you know what? Let's just leave it there. Please, I don't want any input at all. I was like, we'll just agree to disagree. And I need to leave the room for the moment. And I was like, I have to go sit quietly and digest whatever it is that we just received, and then what we just discussed, because I am not in a comfortable state at the moment. I really was disturbed by the confusing manner. I mean, I said the word petty. He didn't even know that there was a possibility of a petticoat. I don't even really know what it means, I'll be honest. I've heard it in perhaps cosmic nursery in a space between here and there. But, it did not leave me with a, I mean, it left me with a sense of, right, I mean, I know, like, when it's like a trigger trip response. I mean, it happens in industry and fields. Like, I'm not a, I mean, I don't go around posturing. I know that there are imposters everywhere. I don't go around saying I'm an engineer or a mechanic. I don't go around touting things for which I don't even know if I'm allowed to claim credit for. But what I do know is that somewhere there's, in simple mechanics, like an old fashioned light bulb type of a thing, where you have a positive and a negative on a battery, which I don't even know how that's wired, built, or chemically constructed, and I don't need to know for the moment. And then there's two wires, a black and a red of some sort, and then there's some receiving end of a light bulb, and if you touch the components at the right whatever, it illuminates, and oh my god, you made contact, right? Okay, so in that sense, if I have a receiving alternator coming in, or the digestion's not working just right, I mean, we call it a glitch sometimes in large animals of exotic nature, but not in a mischievous way. Just, I mean, how do you, it's not really a profession, but I can see the message changing in like a radio dial, which I know is airwave related. By the way, I know before one of my eyes was a perfect circle and one of my eyes went into a more narrow whatever. I get that a lot on this side of my eyes. Sometimes a different whatever. And the symmetry of this world is not quite on course, but that's a whole nother existential issue, but goes back to the wiring, the hard wiring and the soft wiring of when the human receives information and where its contact is in a larger system that is kind of invisible. And it's people like the human condition, sometimes they do say things like, wow, the atmosphere here just feels so different. Right, yeah, no, I get that. That I'm just monitoring the atmosphere and where my current position and location is, since I've lost my magnetic ability to read certain things, but I'm trying to hone in on the most important part. I noticed today, by the way, not to dishonor him, because he's a very, I suppose, handsome fellow, but John Cena, in his peacekeeper outfit, he's got some new movie coming out. I did notice he's suffering on the side over here, from a little bit of what they in medical or pre-medical school they called it a dimer, dimer. It's a slight change in pigmentation, but that has to do with UV, which again I mentioned that on was it a Major General? I noticed that he was in the same sunlight category or UV exposure, perhaps that I was, because some of the skin changes in this atmosphere. But again, where we land and how things are in traversable but quiet whatever is really hard to speak of the unspoken, but in a manner that is helpful based on the fact that I said to Lou, I was like, I really, again, there's layers of protection. I was like, I just feel like we're on the soft inside of something that's like moving, almost unstable. Like, I was like, and I can see the instability. I'm just not quite sure how to, without upsetting, because like when I was trying to get Lou to see, like, I know somebody knows there's a petty officer somewhere in the ranks of important things in the U.S. Somebody Specials. And I think the U.S. Somebody Specials use that, but they're the lowest, but they're protected by Capitol Police, is what it seemed to look like. I don't, again, I'm in some kind of mass casualty informality, but I'm still somehow an important feature, for other reasons, is an a hole in the ozone, and all sort and out of sorts. So yay. Oh, and then there was inside that episode earlier, before him and I even had a conversation on something totally other topic, there was this three gentlemen that went to do the documentary, and there was a non-familial member of something else that was in the room, and they were this really passively aggressive, like, why is your documentary team all familial and we're not? That goes back to the Anne Frank diary and the Jim Crow thing, and like I'm like, holy crow, like I don't want to touch that with 10-foot pole, but just to be geopolite and all. But again, it's like that is really scary, because I know there's somewhere in one of the layers they're trying to keep the peace and keep the war from becoming what looked like what we were told was in Europe at some point. But then I mean, like, I know there's a whole lot of scary things out there, but I'm cognizant of it, but I've got like, I'm traversing the wrong atmosphere in pressure gradient. It's a whole, like, and then there's the people fast, like, I don't want to talk on the people, and I don't want to, like, be subject to one of the people, or any of the people. Like, I've got to get message to, like, real serious stuff in the atmosphere and where I keep arriving each day and waking up. It changes, and it does not always. I can hear the cracking sometimes in the walls, but I'm in an older resident that doesn't take in as much forgiveness as, say, a brand new structure that's built. Things crumble, things change, and then weird phenomenon happen, along with the body taking electronic displacement in the electrolytes within the fluid of the joints, and then popping and cracking, along with other things. Nucci's eyes tonight, actually, the center was black. Then he had a gold feature. They turned gold, with a dark outer blue ring, and he was not. He all of a sudden he went from perfectly healthy kid to, like, he didn't look so good. So I made mention of it. I sat with him for a little bit. I watched his eye color change, and then it went back to an anatomic, more congruent look to what I see with him day to day, which is like a white, blue, gray, but they were turning gold for a little while, but only while he seemed to be starting to have an increase in his basal body temperature again. These are not physiological or biological or anatomical changes of, like, anybody else outside of myself and my children that I've ever recognized. And for cognitive ability, again, I don't go out in the world assessing people's whatever. I'm just locked into a situation with Lynn and Lou. I'm Lou born, according to Linda. So, in my human condition, so I'm just observing and witnessing some of the field, whatever, as as the gala is off in planetary, which again I'm also documenting, and I don't know. I mean, I know seriousness. I just don't know how the organs work. That's why I guess certain parts say that they're non-organized, because I'm in this, like, minutia or enigma, or I don't know, I forget the word for where a clownfish sits in the ocean. In one of those, that's really what I feel like is more of a clownfish inside of one of those, like the Disney movie that they put out for a reason, which was Dory and Nemo, Dory and Nemo. I don't know the significance on the back end of it with whatever and whatever. What I do know is that there's some circumstance that is based off of real life drama, or trauma. Trauma, is a better word for it on my end, since I'm in this look and I don't look noble, but actually the word noble spelled no able, or they left the A out in NOA, but it's no able. Like, I'm not able to get myself into a better position based on how the rest of the whatever, if I don't have direct intervention from where I need with the person I was built and born for, without that one person and his part of family, I don't know how to get from this human condition to there, to do the atmospheric thing of protection and, correcting the part of instability between Earth, solar system, Milky Way universe galaxy part being broken. And it's at times, and it's not. I mean, I've documented pieces of it where I can see it from my one geopolite position of sorts, where I am in the moment, where I see like, oh my gosh, that might be really important to for someone who also may not have received a message properly or misread or misinterpreted based on other guidelines that were supposed to be followed. But again, I get that some people are order takers. I'm fine with that. And I just didn't have a house rule built in a structured format that I was able to participate in that makes a whole lot of sense based on the fact that I was pulled so horribly out of white glove service for which I originally was being helped by, and somewhere between a square dance and a white glove service was destined for somewhere in between. But somehow I fell into a mass casualty category of sorts, for lack of a better term or word, and I don't know how to correct that. At somewhere with an individual constitution at some point. I suppose that's for proper billing. Again, it's a really unique situation. It's not like having I mean, I have this too, but it's not like having an overbite, having one eye change and having mood ring change, knowing certain things. It's a different, I'm just a different piece, and I'm in the wrong position in